The winner of tonight's race between Roy Moore and Doug Jones is anybody's guess. Moore is counting on turnout among Trump Republicans, as you just saw. Are they willing to overlook the numerous allegations of his past sexual misconduct? Well, according to the exit poll data, a wide majority of white evangelical voters, 72%, almost three-quarters, say they believe those allegations are false. Boy, that's a powerful number. They've heard the same news we've all gotten, and they're rejecting it. In turn, Doug Jones needs women voters as well as solid support from African Americans, who represent over a quarter of the state's population. However, a voter ID law, which passed in 2011, could suppress turnout among potential Jones voters. As Scott Douglas writes in the New York Times op-ed, in Alabama, an estimated 118,000 registered voters do not have a photo ID they can use to vote. Black and Latino voters are nearly twice as likely as white voters to lack such documentation. Is this democracy? I'm joined by the Hardball Roundtable. Sophia Nelson's a contributor to NBC BLK and a former House GOP committee counsel. Cornell Belcher's a Democratic pollster and an MSNBC political analyst. And Heidi Pressley, as you all know, is senior politics editor at USA Today and also an MSNBC political analyst. So let's talk about everything. What grabs you about this race?
Well,
Sophia?
Chris, I think that this race is going to come down to white evangelical Christians. I have a piece right now on NBC Think about this, and I break it down that that's the real story here. Is there a hypocrisy? Will they choose the guy who's pro-life but may have done inappropriate things with young girls, or the Democrat who's pro-choice and who helped to find the people that killed the 4 little girls in the black church? So there's a real conundrum here for white evangelical Christians. That, to me, is the story.
Cornell?
I love Sophia, but I'm going to disagree with her slightly because I think we know what the white evangelical Christians are going to do. It's really good to me. It's going to come down to what are those more moderate, middle of the road Republican women do, right? And let's be clear, this is a Republican state. Republican is all heck, right? He only wins if Republicans either sit on their hands or some switch over, right? This is not a close or competitive state. So it's going to come down.
Doug Jones only wins if there's a strange development.
If there's increased turnout among minorities, which the early exit polling says they're actually over indexing, but still, even with that,
if it's over 25%, is that good?
Right now it's over 25%, which is better than what it typically is. But you still need Republican women to cross over.
And that's 25% of the electorate tonight will be African American. That's a good
if more than
sign.
25% of the electorate tonight is African American, which right now the early exits show it more, then that's a really good sign for Democrats. Also, one quick thing, that only 49%, the 49% plurality think that the allegations is true, also is a bad indicator for Roy Moore.
Bad indicator.
Yes.
Well,
Heidi.
if the turnout models are that if overall numbers get up to not just midterm levels, but kind of presidential levels of voting, that Doug Jones actually could have a chance at this. But I agree 100% with Cornell. Sorry, Sophia. This does come down to those Republican women and the conversation that they have with themselves once they get inside that voting booth. Because, look, we should all be having flashbacks here to the actual presidential election itself, when all of the polls suggested that Hillary Clinton had it in the bag, but there was this segment of voters to this day that we think weren't straight with the pollsters about what they were going to do when they pulled the ballots.
Why weren't they straight?
50% of white women. That's what I'm trying to say. It's the white women, stupid. Believe me or not.
Well, why are they saying one thing to pollsters?
Because it's not politically correct. They didn't want to say they were going to vote against Hillary Clinton, but 53% of white women put Donald Trump in the White House.
Okay, let me ask you guys the big question. There's been a lot of national attention on this race across the country, everywhere. The whole world's watching this. Anybody's following the news around the world is watching this. Has that been a plus or negative for Roy Moore? I think it's probably encouraged the turnout, but it's also created this sort of Alabama against the world mentality.
I agree. I totally agree with you.
What's the net effect of all this publicity?
Cornell's right. If there's a 30% black turnout, I think Doug Jones has a shot. I think if it's below that, like I said, white evangelicals and white women are going to carry him into this seat.
I think, real quickly, I think the world is watching this is bad for Mitch McConnell, right? Either way.
No, but go back to this question. You're the pollster here. Is it driving up the attitude of Alabama outside agitators, which we grew up with that phrase?
Tell you, I had a conversation with Senator Kennedy, who's in neighboring Louisiana, but very similar culturally today. We cannot underestimate the seething anger of people in that region about Washington, not just Washington, but the rest of the world coming down there. People like Charles Barkley saying, show them you all are not rednecks.
Well, that's what Ani, you heard Ani a minute ago, Lindbergh. She was saying we're not all the way you people think we are. It threw me in that barrel.
But the flip side of that is, of course, is the business communities who's saying, you know what, we don't want to look to a state that's trying to be a tech and manufacturing hub who wants to bring in all these new companies. We don't want to look backwards in the view of the world.
I think there's a great conflicting strain.